While a reported $10 million ask has yet to be corroborated, what we do know is that Jeremy Swayman is taking a pretty strong stand here in his contract negotiations.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Wednesday, August 28th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today because what time is it? It's game time. Before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Now, as much as we would like to be done with this topic, have to hit on Jeremy Swayman here once again, because in light of a reported, and I use that loosely, it's not corroborated by any hockey insiders that I know of, but it's out there that Jeremy Swayman is perhaps asking for as much as $10 million on his next deal from the Boston Bruins. And as I said in a YouTube clip yesterday, it's not really that big of a deal because players comes in high with a contract ask, the team comes in low, and ideally they meet somewhere in the middle, whether it's right dead center in the middle or closer to the team side or the player side. That remains to be seen. It's not unlike the arbitration process that Swayman and the Boston Bruins went through last summer. The team comes in with their valuation, the player comes in with his ask, and the arbitrator, after hearing all the various arguments, taking into consideration all the factors, lays out his decision or her decision. Now, that process last summer is clearly still weighing on Jeremy Swayman. The Bruins goaltender was on the Shut Up Mark podcast on Monday, and in a clip that was going around Tuesday evening, he had some pretty strong things to say about the negotiation process. First, he said, if you were to ask me a year ago about his contract situation, he would say it's scary. It's a lot of resentment towards people that you want to succeed. And this is referring to the negotiation process, to the arbitration process. You know, player and team are meant to be on the same side, pursuing the same goals, looking towards the same aims of putting together the best possible team in order to compete for the Stanley Cup. But when it comes to contract negotiations, especially in arbitration, it's really player versus team. The player's advocating for his own value, his own worth, what he believes he's capable of and what he's worth. The team is looking to keep costs down in order to not have so much committed to one player, maybe in some situations to avoid going to the salary cap ceiling, and just to spread out the cap. In a cap world, you can't have so much committed to a few players because that generally, as we've seen, doesn't always result in success. And it was not until this year that a goalie making $10 million was able to lead his team to the Stanley Cup, and that was Sergei Bobrovsky. Swayman added, when you're not being compensated for your endless efforts and doing what you do best, it's a nerve-wracking feeling because it's your family that you're fighting for. As a reminder, last summer, Swayman opted for arbitration, and it led him to signing a 1-year, $3.475 million deal. This year, neither Swayman nor the Bruins filed for arbitration, which allowed the two sides to keep negotiating. And Swayman says he is better prepared this time around. He said, "The answer I'm going to give you now, quote, is that I've educated myself and that I understand the business side of it all. It's given me a complete new mindset of understanding the business and how to react to it." He added, "I understand the cap is going up and where it will be in years. I understand my comparables and how I can't ruin the goalie market for other guys that are going to be in my shoes down the line," end quote. Now, part of that business side of things also is the fact that players can be traded. And Jeremy Swayman just saw his best friend, his running mate, his goalie hug partner in Linus Ullmark traded to the Ottawa Senators. That's a big part of the business side of things. But the cap has gone up by $4.5 million this year. It's at 88. It's expected to keep going up. And with a guy like Igor Shesterkin set to hit the open or become a free agent next summer, he could set the new record for goalie payment. The market is going up. And we'll talk about the yay or nay of Swayman being paid, but that's something to keep in mind. He added that he has studied business at the University of Maine, continuing his education at Stanford as part of the NHLPA's incentive to keep players with their educations going. He said, "These experiences I'm doing now are going to help me post-career when I want to be a business manager." He added, "I think 10-year-old Jeremy Swayman didn't think in a million years that he'd be in this position he's in and the city he's in, and the amount of gratitude that I have to be in this situation completely covers up the negative side of everything. Couldn't be happier in this situation. At the end of the day, I'm stopping pucks for the Boston Bruins," end quote. So that's kind of the strong stand that Jeremy Swayman has taken. He's gone through the arbitration process. He's educated himself. He believes in his worth now, and he's also projecting into the future, knowing the cap is going up and not wanting to be undervalued as that cap goes up. He believes he should take up a good percentage of his team's cap as a key member of the reason why the Bruins are successful or were successful last season. There's some caveats to that, of course, and we'll discuss that more here as the podcast continues. I don't know about you, but I love going to live events. All this Oasis reunion talk has me thinking about my next concert or wanting to go to a baseball game before the summer's over, looking ahead to hockey season. Game Time is my go-to app for when I want to attend live events and getting tickets for those events. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. near you. All-in pricing means you don't have to get caught off guard by hidden fees. And I love the seat view where you get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect at the venue. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today because what time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much once again, friends, for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. For your next listen, check out Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, continuing our discussion about Jeremy Swayman and his value, his strong stand, his understanding of the business side of things, the cap going up, the percentage of cap that he should occupy on this team. He's angling to become the second highest paid player on the Boston Bruins, maybe third behind Charlie McAvoy. And that's really not out of the question. He belongs in that stratosphere. He belongs to be paid among the team's top players and among the best goalies in the NHL. Currently, David Pasternak's cap hit is $11.25 million. Charlie McAvoy's at 9.5. You can't tell me that Jeremy Swayman isn't as valuable as those guys, maybe between McAvoy and Pastrnak. And the numbers bear that out. Since entering the NHL back in 2020, 2021, Jeremy Swayman, among goalies who have made at least 100 appearances, is tied for the third best save percentage in the NHL at .919. That's behind only Igor Shesterkin at .920, who's criminally underpaid at under $6 million. And here's where things get a bit more interesting. Linus Ullmark, who's got a .923 save percentage. If you look at playoffs over the last little bit, he's up there as well among the best at his position. And of course, this past season, as the starter for the Boston Bruins in the postseason, he did .933 save percentage in 12 games. Only Joseph Woll of the Toronto Maple Leafs had a better save percentage at .964, but he only faced 56 shots. Jeremy Swayman faced 373 shots, made 348 saves for a .933 save percentage in 12 games, only 25 goals. Remarkable. So you can see that Swayman clearly is among the best at his position since entering the NHL. And he's looking to be paid among those top players. I've mentioned several times the comparables, the players who are making the most money at his position in the NHL. The top cap hit is Carey Price at $10.5 million. He is inactive, of course, hasn't played for some time and will not again. So among active goaltenders, you have Sergei Bobrovsky, who has won a Stanley Cup and has also won the Vezina Trophy at least once. Let me double check that here. But that, I should add, he won the Cup well into his contract with the Panthers and after a pretty average regular season. He won the Vezina in 2013, 2017, of course, a Stanley Cup champion here in 2024. Next, you have Andrei Vasilevsky, who is also a multiple Stanley Cup winner. He has won the Cup 2 times, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and a Vezina Trophy winner in 2019. Those are your 2 highest paid goaltenders. Then you have Connor Hellebuck, who just won the Vezina Trophy and has won it once previously. No Stanley Cup to his name. And then you have Ilya Sorokin, who is, let's be honest, probably the comp that we're looking at here for Jeremy Swayman. He has an NHL All-Star game to his record, NHL second All-Star team to his record, but no real Vezina Trophy to his name, and hasn't really been able to succeed with the Islanders in the postseason. Swayman, on the other hand, has made the All-Rookie team. He's won the William M. Jennings Trophy as part of the top duo in the NHL alongside Linus Ullmark. He's been to an NHL All-Star game. So his comparables are a bit closer to Sorokin, although Sorokin has been I believe, a Vezina Trophy finalist. Let me just double check that as well. But as you can see, if you look at, he was a finalist last year, the year that Linus Ullmark won the Vezina Trophy. Swayman won a Wet Jennings Trophy, but has not yet been a finalist for the Vezina. Sorokin is starting a contract that is paying him $8.25 million for the next 8 years, and he's 29 years old. So if you factor in Swayman's age, he's 4 years younger than Sorokin, entering his prime, arguably. You think that his best days are ahead of him, that he's got some Vezina noms in his future. He took the Bruins to the second round against the Stanley Cup champions, pushed them to 6 games, helped beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. You can see how he has a bit of an argument there for being more highly paid than Ilya Sorokin. Hellebuyck, that's a bit of a tough ask, but Hellebuyck is 31 and he just signed that extension that will take him till like he's 38, being paid $8.5 million against the cap. Will that age well? Who knows? Swayman on an 8-year deal right now, that will age very, very well. So you can see why it should perhaps be a bit higher. He hasn't yet backed it up with Vezina finalist, with a Stanley Cup, Conn Smythe, like in the case of some other guys, but he hasn't yet had that opportunity either. And that's kind of the other side of the coin here. Do I believe Jeremy Swayman is worth $10 million or could give the Bruins $10 million value? Do I think he could be as good as Sergei Bobrovsky? Well, he outplayed Bobrovsky in the playoffs. Bobrovsky did not have a great regular season, and he's, arguably aging out of that contract. And we could see a guy like Spencer Knight step in and carry some of the load here going forward. He had a .915 save percentage last season for the Florida Panthers, and it's really conceivable to think that his best days are behind him, despite the fact that he won Stanley Cup with the Panthers here last season. And we could indeed, he only had a .906 save percentage in the playoffs, whereas Swayman, like I said, had the best save percentage among those goalies. Now, he could give the Bruins $10 million value for sure. Vezina finalist, perhaps some wins. He showed that he can carry the team in the playoffs. But I can see the Bruins side of things as well, where they're saying, maybe we need to see you carry the load big time here before we commit that big money. Or we'd like to keep it down a bit to give the team some flexibility, and also because you haven't achieved all these things yet. So do you pay expecting those things, or do you pay because you've achieved those things? That's the question. And we'll discuss that here more as the podcast continues. Continuing our discussion here on Jeremy Swayman, yay or nay, paying him upwards of $10 million. And I liked what Andrew Raycroft had to say the other day at FanFest. And this is what his insight provided the other day. There's no doubting that Swayman has some of the best odds to win the Vezina Trophy this year. But the fact is, he has never had to carry the workload as a starting goalie. So that's one thing that is working against him. You look at FanDuel's odds, you look at the NHL Player Awards, and our boy Swayman is indeed up there when it comes to Vezina Trophy. Tied with Hellebuck, and Shesterkin for the best odds to win the Vezina Trophy. However, we have to acknowledge that his numbers since entering the NHL, he's never appeared in more than 41 games in a single season. Now the Bruins are arguably going to be asking him to appear in 55, 60, depending on how quickly Joonas Korpisalo can acclimate himself to the team, the system, and actually play well, unlike his performance from a year ago. And Raycroft said, being a starting goalie in the NHL isn't about playing well for a couple days. It's about fighting your way out of a bad week. And he hasn't had to do that yet, Swayman. So it'll be a little bit different, but he's going to do it. He's going to figure it out, and that will be exciting. It's great that the Bruins have a guy like that. Say Swayman, like it was often where it was a true rotation between Ullmark and Swayman, where you'd have Swayman start, then Ullmark, Swayman, Ullmark, Swayman, Ullmark. That's literally how things went last season for the most part for the Boston Bruins, to the point where people expected that to continue in the playoffs, and it did for one 2-game stretch against the Maple Leafs, where they went back to Swayman after game 2 of the of that series against the Maple Leafs. Now, if Swayman has a tough start, you can't necessarily just go back to Korpisalo and expect that it will be a rebound game, or that things will be at the same level. You had one stretch last season where Swayman had 6 appearances in a row. He lost 3, 4-3 in a shootout to Colorado, 4-3 in overtime to Arizona, 2-1 in overtime to Vegas, and then he won the next 3, a shutout against New Jersey, 4-3 in overtime against St. Louis, a 5-2 win over Colorado. Those are pretty tight games and some good wins there. Otherwise, it was a pretty even split. So from Bruins' perspective, they're probably thinking, we want to see you do this before we pay you like one of the best goalies in the NHL. But all the evidence is pointing to the fact that the Bruins should have 100% confidence in his ability to be a leader of this team and take over. Guys know his character, his personality. He's going to work hard as anyone. And while Korpisalo, Raycroft believes, is going to be helpful and a good partner, he had good stretches in LA and Columbus. He's got the talent. It's not going to be an even split like you had with Ullmark and Swayman. You can go back and see guys have come in and played well in those kind of bounce back opportunities. Anton Hudobin, Jonas Gustafsson, Manny Fernandez, to bring up some names. Goalie Bob has the track record to get the most out of Korpisalo. But there's no question that Swayman is going to be carrying a much heavier load, and perhaps the Bruins are being a bit cautious, thinking, well, maybe we don't want to pay you like this guy yet because we want to see what happens, or we want to kind of hedge that bet a bit by keeping the cap hit down so that we can not be tied to that and build a more competitive team around him as the cap goes up. There's no question this team still needs scoring help. And we're seeing some PTOs being floated. We're seeing Philip Zadina perhaps signing elsewhere. James Van Riemsdyk needs a new contract. Blake Wheeler, perhaps Kyler Yamamoto coming in on PTOs. If the Bruins go above the 8.6 that they have committed to or left in the cap to Jeremy Swayman, there's really no flexibility there. And don't forget that they only have 8.6 million left. So if they sign him for more than that, they have some maneuvering to do. So yes, Jeremy Swayman is taking a strong stand. And rightfully so. He believes in his worth. He understands the situation, the context, and deserves to be paid among the highest goalies, the best goalies in the NHL. But the Bruins, of course, they want to keep his cap hit down so that as the cap goes up, they can do more to build around him. And in order to hedge that bet, that if for whatever reason things don't work out or he doesn't maintain that elite level of play, well, they'll be committed to him no matter what. So the smart play here is just to get him signed, commit because you believe in Jeremy Swayman. Don't let that resentment from the arbitration process continue to seep in here. Just pay the man. He deserves it. Whether it's at that $10 million, I still think it should be around Sorokin, Hellebuck, maybe a bit lower than that is where the Bruins probably want to come in. Between Sorokin and John Gibson at 6.4, he's probably pushing for at least Hellebuck money. But again, Hellebuck has those two Vezinas to his name, whereas Swayman hasn't even been named a finalist yet. Will he? Can he? Probably. But you can't ignore the fact that that's on Hellebuck's resume and that Vasilevsky and Bobrovsky have a lot of hardware on their resumes as well. The saga continues, folks. Hopefully there's some resolution here soon, and we'll keep you up to date on all the latest on the black and gold here on Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. Don't forget to check out the Locked On NHL podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. Now go check out Locked On NHL. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Hope you're all having a great week, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.